In our society, marriage is only about producing children. You need to stop old people at the nursing home from getting married. You need to stop anybody who's infertile from getting married. And if anybody becomes infertile during the relationship, you need to take back the marriage certificate. Ben Shapiro had a hot take. Oh, what's Ben Shapiro's hot take? I'm very curious. Let's see. Ben Shapiro tells any Republican senator voting for codifying same-sex marriage, you should not be in the Republican Party. Really? Wow. Is he actually gonna, is that really his position now? That any Republican senator voting for the codification of same-sex marriage, you should not be in the Republican Party. Wow. I mean, look, I disagree with him and I agree with him in a way. Let's listen to what he has to say first, but yeah, let's hear what he has to say first.
So with the Democrats taking the Senate, they're now going to move ahead with a vote on a gay marriage bill. Now, what is the purpose of a gay marriage bill? There is no purpose to a gay marriage bill. Obergefell has already been ruled upon. And a simple gay marriage bill is not even a constitutional amendment. So it's not even above and beyond the Supreme Court ruling. The Supreme Court ruling is still the law. If the Supreme Court ruling were overturned, a quick majority in the Senate could quickly overturn this law.
So the thing is, this is preempting that. There was a lot of discussion during the Obama majority when he briefly had a majority when he became president, even though it was rife with like senators being sick and away and stuff like that, if whether they should codify Roe versus Wade. It was difficult to codify it for many reasons, but there also was like a deliberate decision made of like, this is not the priority right now with all the difficulties and political capital it would cost, it's probably not worth it. And now, with Roe versus Wade being overturned like 10 years later, there's really nothing on the federal level protecting women's reproductive rights like there was for like 40 to 50 years because of Roe versus Wade. And so Democrats, having had that lesson taught to them very brutally, and now women will be the victim of learning that lesson, want to make sure something like that doesn't happen again for another massive achievement for queer people. Another massive achievement that was attained during the Obama administration, which is the gay marriage ruling. It was a massive achievement. And so there are some people who are worried that with this heavily Republican Supreme Court that they might overturn it, or something might come around in the future and they might overturn it. Or maybe Donald Trump wins in 2024, Ron DeSantis wins in 2024, they get even a bigger Republican majority, and maybe they do hear a ruling down the line. And so basically what this gay marriage law is meant to do is that if something happens and it's overruled in the future, or there's some issue for whatever reason, and the Supreme Court decision that gay marriage is a constitutional right, that decision gets overturned, it already being enshrined in federal law will basically act as a brake to stop gay people all across the country out of nowhere having their marriages basically invalidated and being told you can no longer marry who you love. That's the reason. So he can say it's pointless, but even if it's pointless and he disregards everything I said and it's just a symbolic vote, then what's the problem? Just vote for it if it's a symbolic vote and you affirm of somebody's right to marry whoever they want as long as they're a consenting adult.
Okay, but the idea here is that you're going to get all the Republicans on record as to whether they support or do not support same-sex marriage. Now, let me just put this out there for the Republican senators. If you vote in favor of the idea that society has an obligation to recognize male-male or female-female dyads in the same way that society has an obligation to recognize male-female, you should not be in the Republican Party. You shouldn't. Okay, the reason I say this is not because...
Dude, I would love Ben Shapiro talking to the average voter about gay marriage. Well, you should change your opinion because I know that you say you love your husband, but have you ever considered the male dyads? I would love to see that interaction with the voter.
I wish to shrink the size of the Republican Party. Because if the fundamental basis of human society is male-female child, and you think that by passing a law you can change that reality, you do not belong in government. This is a very simple proposition. Men and men are not the same as a man and a woman who are capable of becoming one flesh and producing a child. This is not difficult stuff. Many Republicans will be tempted to vote for this simply to avoid the conflict, so that people don't yell at them, oh my gosh, you're not respecting love is love. Now, first of all, the love is love argument was always bull.
Always bullcrap. Okay, so I wanted to quickly comment about this clip, because I think that with gay marriage being in kind of like the mirror for a lot of people's like political debates, like this is something about from like 7 years ago, 2015 decision. This is something that's overwhelmingly popular with the majority of Americans in favor of gay marriage. It's like 67, 68%. Like even I think almost a majority, if not a majority of Republicans are even in favor of gay marriage. Or it's getting close to that. So what Ben Shapiro's position here is a position of the far right base of the Republican Party still. And the arguments he's making are old retired arguments. We just haven't heard them in a while. So some of you might hear this argument and be like, and be a little confused about like what the response to that should be. So let me just say, his argument was basically Republicans should vote against gay marriage. Republicans should vote against and be against legalizing gay marriage, allowing two consenting adults to marry whoever they want. It's everybody's individual business. You don't need to endorse it on an individual level, but allow people to live their lives how they want when it comes to marriage. That we can't do that because two men cannot produce a child in the way that a man and a woman can. And marriage is reserved for the production of children. That's the point of marriage. The point of marriage is to continue the species, continue the nation, continue the people, you know, and give birth to many, many young, strong warriors for the nation state. Young, strong patriots who will storm the shores of China. Okay, I threw in that little part myself, but I assume that's what he would have said. If he was being completely unfiltered. Probably not. But anyway, he believes that marriage is to produce children. And I guess my main response to that would be, first off, a man and a man, maybe not. But, you know, with the creation of, you know, artificial uteruses and the advancement of technology, it will not be long before two men can produce a child on their own. And there are many people who will host for a child being born for two gay men. For a gay woman, it's a lot easier because they can be artificially inseminated. But of course, past that point, you can go into the argument of, well, that's not natural. And then you get into the debate, well, what is natural? Well, what is natural life? What is natural? But I don't want to get into that metaphysical debate because all of this can be avoided anyway. Getting into like, what is natural? Where does nature start and end? Is us not using our brains to advance scientific science to make our lives more comfortable and strive to better heights? Isn't that we can get into that, but that is not what really matters here because I want to make a point that I feel like settles this very quickly. If an infertile man wanted to marry a woman, should he be allowed to marry her? If an infertile woman wanted to marry a man and there was no chance, zero chance they could produce a child, either due to some, accident, freak accident, something that a condition she or he was born with at birth, but they love each other. They love each other a lot. They want to build a home together. They want to maybe have pets in a nice white picket fence. They want to be a joint home. Maybe even they want to adopt. Maybe they want to adopt a child, but they can't give natural birth to one. Natural birth in the way Ben Shapiro says natural, which I still object to. Should they be allowed to be married? Because if the argument is the reason why gay people can't get married is because they can't produce children in the way Ben Shapiro wants them to, not through artificial wombs or artificial insemination, which the technology on that continues to strive, continues to get better. But apparently that's not enough. It has to be in the way he wants it. If that's the standard, then what about people in relationships where they can't give birth to children? Either because the woman is infertile or the man is infertile. Can they get married? And if this is the standard that Ben Shapiro is holding, would he commit to saying that anybody who cannot produce children in their current relationship, be that the elderly, who, once you get too old, you just kind of can't anymore, or people who have had freak accidents or were born with conditions that make it so either A, they don't want to have children because they might pass those conditions down, or B, the condition is that they're infertile, should all those people have their marriage license or marriage certificate stripped from them, taken off of them, and not allowed to marry? Because if the standard is marriage is only, in our society, marriage is only about producing children, then you need to stop old people at the nursing home from getting married. You need to stop anybody who's infertile from getting married. And if anybody becomes infertile during their relationship, you need to take back the marriage certificate for us to be consistent. But I don't think this is about consistency. I think it's just that Ben Shapiro doesn't want children to really be raised in gay families, and he doesn't want to give gay relationships, gay marriages, the same respect that he gives straight relationships in straight marriages. And so he doesn't want his politicians favoring what is overwhelmingly popular in the United States, and that is backing gay marriage. And this is actually, unironically, a good reason as to why, and Ben Shapiro was right here, part of the reason why this law is being proposed is to just show how radical the Republican senators are on gay marriage. But Ben Shapiro also showed himself and what his position is on gay marriage. And it's unpopular. Yes, you should force Republicans to take unpopular political positions and record it by vote if possible. So yes, I am in favor of this law. I'm in favor of there being a vote going on this law, and I think Ben Shapiro's argument against it doesn't hold any water if we wanted him to be consistent about who should be allowed to get married and who shouldn't. We're just trying to make the perfect little circle around marriage that excludes gay people. But in that circle, you're cutting off a lot of straight people who are already in marriages that Ben Shapiro most certainly wouldn't object to. You think Ben Shapiro is going to do a story about how it's bad that two elderly people got married at the nursing home because they can't, screw and produce children? You think Ben Shapiro is going to do a story about an infertile man marrying a woman and how dare that woman waste her eggs on such a pathetic infertile man? She has to go find a real man so he can produce that. We should take away the marriage certificate. Or do you think he would react to a story where a freak accident happens where, maybe a woman loses her child, during her pregnancy, and now she can't produce anymore because of the accident? You think his statement's gonna be like, damn, that's a tragedy, but we need to get that marriage certificate out? Of course not. This is just a rule that's being applied and selectively applied to queer people in order to try to deny them marriage rights. I think it's bad. I think it's hypocritical. I think Ben Shapiro doesn't have consistent standards here. And I think any Republican who's going to use this as a defense, like Matt Walsh did, and we talked about this before on the channel, they're all being hypocritical and they're not being consistent here. This is a silly position. A very silly position. From the facts and logics guy. My goodness. Exceptions don't negate the norms. Well, but if it's just for the production of children, should we stop infertile people? That's my question to you, Deeply Thundercat. Why do we not stop infertile people from marrying each other, but we do stop gay people from marrying each other, if it is that marriage's only purpose is the production of children? Because I think marriage has a lot of purposes. I think it's an expression of love. I think it has to do with taxes. I think a lot of it has to do with raising children, not necessarily giving birth to children naturally. The way Ben Shapiro wants it in his definition of natural. I think it also has to do with raising children, whether by adoption or by artificial insemination. I think marriage is for a lot of things, not just male, female, traditional sex production of children. I don't think marriage is just a permission card to have sex with a woman as a man and produce a child. I think marriage is more than that. Anyway, that's enough on this Ben Shapiro story. What a silly objection. Ben Shapiro's right. Pro-gay Republicans should leave the Republican Party. True. So based. That's the other thing I want to say about that is, unironically though, when I say Ben Shapiro was kind of right, he is kind of right in the way that, like, if you're like pro-gay, why are you in the Republican Party? The majority of Republicans in the House voted against gay marriage. They're against gay marriage. And so will the senators. So, like, what does that say about the state of your party if you're a pro-gay person or an ally or queer yourself? What does that say? What does it say about what you're willing to put up with?